Good afternoon, dear boys and girls students. I would like to introduce you today with the life and literary career one of the greatest writer of the 14th century, Geoffrey Chaucer. Don't forget that Geoffrey Chaucer was the last writer of the Middle Ages, but the first writer during the Renaissance period. As you know, or maybe some of you don't know, Renaissance period was a glorious event in the history of Europe. This glorious historical event continued 300 years, from the 14th century continued till the 17th century. During these periods appeared outstanding and famous figures in the field of literature, art, politics, and other science. And Geoffrey Chaucer was one of them who appeared during the Renaissance period. Geoffrey Chaucer was born in the family of London merchant in the 1340, and after the 100 Years' War, which broke out between France and England. His father was John Chaucer, was a London merchant at Tojiri Londoni بود. He had John Chaucer had connection with the court and always dreamed and hoped that about his courtier career for his son. And that's why his son, at the age of 70, Geoffrey became as a servant to a lady at the court of Edward III. At 20, Chaucer was in France and serving as a squire to a knight. Squire to a knight, jak khizmatgor ba yak knight ritsar megan, yani جوشن‌پوش‌ها سربازهای جنگی همون اروپایی رو میگن. But later was then taken as a prisoner by the French authority. And his friends helped to ransom him. During 1373, Geoffrey Chaucer he traveled much and lived a busy life. He went to France on a mission connected with the peace treaty after the finishing of World 100 Years War, which finished between England and France. And then he made 3 journeys to Italy, which made a deep impression on him. I would like to note this point that at that period, Italy was at the height of its development, and Italy was the first country where the bourgeoisie, and a new class of society, victoried over feudalism. And really we have to know that traveling to Italy made a great impression on the future literary activity of Geoffrey Chaucer. And we would note very important thing that and also we can divide literary career of Geoffrey Chaucer into 3 parts, 3 periods. the first period, Chaucer's earliest poems, which were written in imitation of France's romances. Don't forget that at that period, in the field of literature, especially in the writing of novels and romances, France was the leading, played a leading role in Europe. And Chaucer translated from French a famous allegorical poem of the 13th century, The Romance of the Rose, the name of his work. The name of his work, The Romance of the Rose. Though the poem was very long, but its plot was very simple. And in the second period of Chaucer's literary career, here we can underline that we see the influence of Italian literature. And to this period belong the following poems of Geoffrey Chaucer: The House of the Fame, a detective poem; The Parliament of Fools, an allegorical poem satirizing Parliament; Troilus and Cressida, and the last, The Legend of the Good Women. All these works were written during the second period, and here we noted and we felt the great influence in France literature in the second period. At the beginning, the influence of the Italian literature. Chaucer was well read in ancient literature. Italian literature of the time taught him the importance of the national literature in the life of a nation. And then later, in the third period, we would like to note something, that the third period of Chaucer's literary career begins in the year of 1384. 1384. In this period, the third period, he wrote his famous work, his famous masterpiece, Shoh Asar, the Canterbury Tales. Canterbury Tales. It has been short about the life and periods of literary career of Geoffrey Chaucer. Now a short information about his very famous and very outstanding work, the Canterbury Tale. First, Canterbury Tale was about Savoy, Canterbury. It's one of the glorious and religious and historical place for all the Breton people. The Canterbury Tales are series of the stories written in verse. در شکل نظم نوشته شده هستند. The framework which serves to connect them to a pilgrimage to Canterbury. So the distance from London to Canterbury is 60 miles. 60 miles. But in those days, there were no straight road in order to go to Canterbury Tale. And the majority of the people from different parts of England, they went to Canterbury Tale on foot. Pilgrimages همون زیارت کننده ها of every kind, poor and rich and other and other classes of the society were extremely common in Chaucer's time. Such journeys of the population of that period, such journeys were no doubt very valuable. خیلی ارزشمند بود همین رفتن مردم به همون منطقه ها. As a means by which to break the monotony of the life in days when there were no newspapers at that period. There were no newspapers, no printed books, and no any theaters. Many people looked forward to, for example, in order to reach and to go to that glorious place for all the population of England at that period. The months for these pilgrims were April and May. Those people who, for example, went to this glorious place, and the months which very often, very many people went to that place were the months April and May, because it was the months of spring. The spring is the best season in the British Isles. I mean, as the Tajik people, if we compare, the majority of our people, especially Tajik people, in compare with the other seasons, they like spring best of all. And England also, because of this glorious place, Canterbury, they love spring very much in compare with the other seasons. The most popular English pilgrimage was to Canterbury. Many people. Second, to Canterbury was the town of Chester, where people could see plays based on the Bible stories performed in the churches. Especially many of them at that period, the influence of church was very high, and it was the beginning of the Renaissance period, and the majority of the pilgrimages, they went in order to sing especially songs from Bible in the churches and inns. Pilgrimage towns were crowded with the inns and churches. Inns and churches. Inns همون جاهایی که در اونجا خوابگاه هم هست، یگان آشخانه هم هست، یگان چی هم هست، همون را این میگویند. Churches خیلی معلوم برای شما. Bells were constantly ringing. Bells constantly ringing at that period, and also today in our days also. همون زنگ ها مستقیما همین زده میشن زنگوله ها. Bells were constantly ringing. Some churches had relics of the saints, and people believed these had the miraculous power to cure diseases. از این جمله کمتر گنج بعضی کلمه های نام، زیرا که این تصور میکردن که همین جای مقدس، همین زنگوله ها زدن و یک فرض کردیم که یک فضای فرض کردیم که عجایب رو در تصورات آنها می آورد که آنها یا که خودشون رو از کسلی ها فرض کردیم که نجات می دادن با توسط همین شیرخوانی و همین منظره همین Canterbury. Other people were attracted by the beautiful monuments. There were many historical monuments in Canterbury, and people were interested on them. And at Canterbury Cathedral, همون کلیسای مقدسی همون کنتمبری که بسیار عزیز است برای فرض کردیم که مردم بریتانیا. There is a shrine of Thomas Becket. Shrine, it means همون مرقد یا که آرامگاهی. اکنون who was Thomas Becket? A sheep of the 20th century. فرض کردیم که چنون بوده که همون عصر 12 بود. کی بود این کس؟ Who struggled against the king for the independence of the church. این شخص یکمین شخصیتی بود که مبارزه بود درباره مستقلیت فرض کردیم که از کلیسا. He was murdered by the order of the king Henry II. یعنی این با سفارش شاه هنری دو یعنی قتل کرده شد. And later made a Catholic saint. یک جای مقدسی کاتولیک ها همین شد. What does it mean, for example, some sentences around Canterbury Tales? چی مضمون دارد کن؟ The pilgrimage was a democratic institution. اصلا همین زیارتی که به همین جای مقدس میکردن یک فرض که نهاد دموکراتی بود. چه نهاد دموکراتی؟ What kind of democratic institution? Because which means that rich and poor, آدمای بای و کمغل، noble and peasant، فرض کردیم که اشراف زاده و کمبغل دهقان، rode side by side، آنها در کنار هم می نشستند and stopped at the same inns، و در همون یک فرض کردیم مهمانخانه یا یک جای همون توقفگاه یک جای بای و کمبغل شاه و گدا همه یک جای می نشستند. It has some humanistic moral. یعنی یک فرض کردیم که اخلاقی انسان دوستی را ترنم میکند. همین اثر The Canterbury Tale which gathers for example different classes of the society, rich and poor and noble and peasant, and they live together for some period and they sleep together, they eat together, they sing together. It means it's the main moral, humanistic moral. Now, thank you for your attention. I am very grateful that I have made a short lecture around Geoffrey Chaucer. Please, if you have any questions around their life and literary career and his masterpiece work, Canterbury Tales, I am at your disposal. Thank you for your attention.